Good evening, class. So, there have been circumstances that have caused us to do our lesson over Google Meet, which we were going to do it in class, but we're going to make do. And all of you will have this copy on your Google Classroom. So, if you go in right now, you can see that you have this infographic under Boston Tea Party infographic. And if you'll click on it, and zoom in, we're going to start in the beginning. First, I would like to ask you guys, do any of you know anything about the famous Tea Party? You can put your answers in the Meet chat, or you can verbally answer. Just raise your hand first, and then I'll call on you. Okay. Was King George III invited? All right. Now let's dive into the Boston Tea Party. The way it all unfolded was that the Dartmouth was carrying tea and was soon to be seized by the governor. There was a meeting about this, and once it ended, the crowd streamed out onto the street to chase 30 to 60 men dressed as Indians down to Griffin's Wharf in what John Adams calls an intrepid exertion of popular power. The men proceeded to dump 342 chests of tea into the sea. Now, this begs to ask, why did this happen? Parliament rescinded the townshend duties on 4 of the 5 commodities that had been taxed. The duty on tea remained in force. The Patriots were outraged and looked to push efforts to boycott tea by appealing to merchants and centenary, but people loved their tea and their resolve weakened. Now, if you look in this picture, which is a little blurry, it wouldn't be so blurry if we were on the board at school. But it is an image of what actually happened during the Boston Tea Party. So who did it? The Boston Tea Party was organized and carried out by a group of patriots led by Samuel Adams, known as the Sons of Liberty. And again, you have your colonists dressed as Indians throwing tea overboard in this image on the right. So what were the consequences? As a result of the Boston Tea Party, the British shut down Boston Harbor until all of the 310 chests of British East India Company tea were paid for. This was implemented under the 1774 Intolerable Acts and known as the Boston Port Act. So that guy right there in that picture is actually Samuel Adams. So just get an image. This is the guy who orchestrated all of this. Who was involved? Famous Boston patriots who were members of the Sons of Liberty included John Adams, John Hancock, James Otis, Josiah Quincy, Paul Revere, and Dr. Joseph Warren. Incited by the Sons of Liberty, over 5,000 people gathered at the Old South Meeting House, the largest public building in Boston at the time, at 10 a.m. on December 16, 1773, to decide what was to be done about the tea and the plan of the Boston Tea Party. So do any of those other names sound familiar? John Adams was actually Samuel Adams' cousin. And both John Adams and John Hancock, I know for sure, went on to sign the Constitution. And we know Paul Revere's name because of earlier in the unit, we learned about his ride and how he actually screamed that the regulars are coming, not the British are coming, which is a fun little fact from our book. So now we're going to dial in. And I believe we are about to watch this short little video.
Today we're looking at the Boston Tea Party. Who Hello, welcome to the Daily Bell Ringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. So, in the wake of the Boston Massacre, the British lightened up on the American colonies in terms of regulations and taxes. Many of the 2,000 British troops that occupied Boston were called back to England, and many taxes that had been imposed were repealed. All except for a tax on tea. Tea was extremely popular in the colonies, and the British wanted to maintain the tax as a symbol of their authority to tax the colonies. In response, many colonists began to boycott tea that was shipped to America by the British East India Company, and instead smuggled the tea in and did not pay any taxes. This also made the smuggled variety of the tea cheaper than the British supplied tea. In the past, the British had tried to cut down on smuggling by passing tougher regulations, and those plans had not really worked out so well. And so now they decided to try a new ploy. In May of 1773, British Parliament passed the Tea Act. The Tea Act was not a tax. What it did was it gave the British East India Company the authority to basically sell tea directly to colonists and cut out colonial tea merchants, who were the middlemen and would mark up the tea in order to make a profit. By doing this, they made the price of British supplied tea cheaper than the smuggled tea. So even with the taxes, it was still cheaper than the smuggled tea. So you would think that this was a great deal for the colonists, and they would get cheaper tea and they wouldn't buy the smuggled tea. Well, the colonists saw what the British were doing, and they still refused to buy British tea because of the tax on it. By late 1773, the crisis over tea came to a head in Boston. Near the end of November 1773, three British ships arrived at Griffin's Wharf in Boston loaded with British tea. The dock workers there at Griffin's Wharf, many of them, of course, being members of the Sons of Liberty, refused to unload the tea off the boats and demanded that the ships leave and go back to England. Thomas Hutchinson, who was the colonial governor of Massachusetts, demanded the ships be unloaded and the taxes on the tea be paid. On the evening of December 16, 1773, a crowd of thousands of colonists gathered at the South Meeting House in Boston. The crowd took a vote and voted to not pay the taxes on the tea and not allow the tea to be unloaded. The captain of one of the ships stood up and told the crowd that he had been given orders by the governor to not leave until the tea was unloaded. At that point, Samuel Adams got up and said, "This meeting can do no more to save the country." Now, this might seem like a simple statement from Adams, but in the years following the events of that evening, it was found that this was the signal for the Sons of Liberty to spring into action and unload the tea, just not exactly in the manner that Governor Hutchinson or the British were expecting. So a large group of men wearing Native American disguises began to march towards Griffin's Wharf. Thousands followed them through the streets of Boston. At the wharf, these men boarded the ships and began throwing and dumping chests of tea into the water. For over 2 hours, thousands of colonists cheered as 342 chests holding 45 tons of tea was dumped into Griffin's Wharf. The value of the tea today would be somewhere near $1 million. The men then cleaned up the decks of the ship, leaving almost no sign of the destruction, except for all the water in the harbor, of course, now being turned completely brown from the tea. The men then quickly vanished into the crowd of spectators. At the time, many suspected the Sons of Liberty, and they would have been right, but at the time, no one would admit to who did it. Only one person, Francis Akeley, was arrested and charged with the destruction of the tea. Some colonists rejoiced in what became known as the Boston Tea Party, while others realized they might have just pushed the British too far, and they would be right, as the British now would crack down severely on the colonies, and especially Boston. These new policies and regulations by the British in reaction to the Boston Tea Party would be a direct cause of the first shots being fired in the American Revolution. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a few harder thinking questions. And again, just put your answers in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. So, what would the result be if the colonists did not have their Tea Party? How could this have changed the course of American history? Do you think that maybe we would be where we are today? Okay, so the next question is, how is the Boston Tea Party connected to the Stamp and Townshend Acts? How did the Boston Tea Party have a direct effect on the Stamp and Townshend Acts? I believe that video just gave you a little bit of the answer to that one. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so to finish up this lesson, we will be completing an activity as a whole group. So while we are doing so, I need you all to pay attention to the correct answers. I'll be asking how you know the answer is correct and expect an explanation from you all. As we wrap up today's lesson and review the events of the Boston Tea Party, it becomes clear how it connects to the broader themes that we have been exploring. The act of protest and defiance demonstrated by the colonists during the Boston Tea Party serves as a powerful example of standing up against injustice and oppression. It highlights the importance of raising our voices and acting when confronted with situations that compromise our values and beliefs. Furthermore, the Boston Tea Party emphasized the significance of unity and solidarity among individuals working towards a common goal. By coming together to resist unfair taxation and assert their rights, the colonists showcased the strengths that can be found in collective action. In reflecting on the Boston Tea Party, we are reminded of the impact that ordinary people can have when they are willing to challenge unjust systems and advocate for change. It serves as a reminder that history is shaped not only by grand events and powerful figures, but also by the everyday actions of courageous individuals who dare to make a difference. Can anybody give me a real life example of something that has just happened? Actually, here in our school district? Yeah, you're right. So, our teachers just created a united group to try to repeal our 1% raise to get a 5% raise. And a lot of your parents and families have showed support for that by using their voice, by simply using passive signs that say we love our teachers and showing their support for us, your teachers. So now I'm going to allow you some time to work on this assignment. We're going to go back into here. And this is the assignment right here. Boston Tea Party questions. Whoops. There's the instructions. So it says to answer all questions thoroughly and accurately, which means to answer all parts of the questions and answer them well. Be sure to use correct punctuation and capital letters. I will be looking for this. We are fifth graders. We should be able to use correct punctuation and capitals when they are needed. If you need help with this, let me know. So you're going to put your name right in here and your email, and then I expect more than one sentence for each of these questions. So, the effect of the Boston Tea Party was, the cause of the Boston Tea Party was, the Boston Tea Party led to, the most likely reason for the Boston Tea Party was, and the Boston Tea Party is important because. Please use complete sentences, correct punctuation, and capital letters when needed. I will be here for you as you need help with this activity. Thank you guys for joining, and if you don't need help, you can leave now. Okay, guys, thank you for coming to class tonight and participating, and I will go through and grade all of these and give you some feedback. And if I see that you didn't do so well on it, I will get with you when we get back to school, or either I will create a meet individually for you and we can talk through it and maybe do a little better the second time. Have a good rest of your evening. Bye.